The galaxy prided itself on order. For millennia, the Council of Species had dictated the laws that bound star systems, empires, and civilizations together. They claimed peace through bureaucracy, stability through rules, and obedience through fear. Every species that rose to the stars was shackled by this endless web of treaties, tariffs, and decrees. And then came humanity. They were late to the galactic stage, an unremarkable race from a small blue planet on the spiral arm. At first, the Council dismissed them, another primitive species to be tamed and folded neatly into the machine of order. But humans were not like the others. They didn't bend. They didn't yield. When the galaxy ordered them to kneel, they stood taller. When rules were thrust upon them, they broke them, rewrote them, and turned the very laws of the galaxy into weapons. The Council would learn, through blood, fire, and struggle, that humans did not follow rules. We made them. The galaxy was quiet the night the spark was struck. In the darkness between spiral arms, the void stretched endless and cold, broken only by the faint shimmer of starlight and the burn of plasma engines carving their trails through nothingness. It was in this void that the Council's rules had always reigned supreme. No ship moved without authorization. No trade was conducted without decree. The web of bureaucracy was vast, invisible, and absolute. Until a small convoy of human freighters dared to cross it. The Vathar Prime, a Council patrol cruiser of the Theris Dominion, caught them first. To Captain Tlor, it was routine, a simple interception, nothing more. He had done this hundreds of times before. The humans were hauling cargo through the Varkos expanse, a sector explicitly forbidden to emerging species. That phrase, like so many others in the Council's lexicon, was a polite way of saying lesser beings. By Decree 774, c, trespassers were to be fined, searched, and reminded of their place. Tlor stood on the bridge of his cruiser, his mandibles clicking with practiced boredom as he prepared the transmission. "Unidentified convoy," he said, his voice amplified by the comm relays. "You are in violation of Council Decree 774, c, power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." On the main display, the freighters continued their steady drift. 6 vessels, ungainly, blocky, and graceless compared to the sleek curves of Council craft. Human designs always struck him as crude, like hastily welded tools. But crude things were easy to break. "Transmit again," Tlor ordered. "They may not understand standard." The ensign complied. Again, silence. Then, after several long moments, a reply crackled through the comms. The voice was rough, unmistakably human, and utterly without fear. "We don't answer to decrees we never agreed to. If you want our cargo, come and take it." The word stunned the bridge crew. Gasps and clicks of disbelief rippled across the chamber. Tlor's mandibles froze mid-motion. "Repeat that," he demanded. The ensign hesitated, then replayed the transmission. The defiance was crystal clear. Never, never, in Tlor's decades of service had a lesser race spoken so. They all obeyed, because that was how the galaxy worked. Rules were rules. Without them, there was only chaos. "Summon escorts from the sector fleet," Tlor growled, rage seeping through his composure. "We will demonstrate the price of arrogance." His order was already unnecessary. The humans had made their choice. And choices carried consequences. Hours later, the trap was sprung. The Vathar Prime, flanked by 5 other patrol ships, cornered the convoy near a dead star. The human freighters, lumbering and vulnerable, had nowhere to run. "Lock weapons," Tlor ordered. He expected pleading soon, begging for mercy, cries for negotiation. That was the way it always went. But the humans didn't plead. They didn't beg. They answered with silence. Then, space tore open. The first human warship emerged like a shadow given form, black hull glinting faintly with the light of distant suns. Then another. And another. One by one, they slid from the void, surrounding the convoy in a crescent formation. Flores' eyes widened. These were not freighters. They were bait. Contact, 12, no, 14 ships, the sensor officer cried. Configuration unknown. The display bloomed with hostile signals. Each ship was massive, angular, built not with the elegance of council design but with raw, brutal intent. Bristling with weapons, their dark plating absorbed light as though space itself bent around them. The humans called them the Black Armada. Floor had never seen anything like it. Council doctrine dictated that warships were symbols, ornate, ceremonial, built as much for intimidation as for combat. These were predators. They're moving to encircle, the ensign shouted, panic creeping into his tone. Open fire. Floor roared. The void exploded in light. Plasma lances streaked outward, missiles shrieked into the dark, and the council ships unleashed the fury of their decree. But the humans were already in motion. They didn't fight in lines. They didn't hold position. They darted, weaved, and struck like wolves, tearing into the formation with feral precision. One council ship was gutted within seconds, its reactor flaring like a miniature sun before vanishing in silence. Another had its engines sheared off, spinning helplessly into the void. On the bridge of the Vathar Prime, Plor struggled to comprehend. Their maneuvers, they're unorthodox. They're breaking all formation protocols. Of course they were. Humans had never cared for rules. The Black Armada closed in. Boarding pods lanced out, slamming into hulls. Council soldiers, bred for ceremonial displays of order, found themselves overwhelmed by screaming, armored humans wielding weapons designed to kill, not stun. Blood ran in zero-gravity droplets. "Captain," the tactical officer cried. "We cannot hold." A flash of light cut him off. Another patrol ship detonated, its wreckage slamming into the Vathar Prime's shields. Floor knew then that the battle was lost. But worse than the loss was the realization gnawing at him: this was no accident, no act of piracy. This was deliberate. Humanity had lured them in, defied them openly, and struck them down with ruthless intent. It was rebellion. The battle lasted 13 minutes. When it ended, the Council's patrols were nothing more than debris scattered across the expanse. The human convoy drifted on, untouched, protected by the fangs of the Black Armada. Across the galaxy, reports spread like wildfire. The Council tried to contain the story, labeling it as terrorist piracy. But whispers grew. Every dock, every station, every world spoke of it. The humans don't kneel. The humans don't obey. On Earth, the reaction was simple. In the halls of the United Terran Command, Admiral Elias Grant studied the battle recordings with cold satisfaction. "They'll call us lawbreakers," one of his aides muttered. Grant allowed himself a thin smile. "Good. Laws were made to keep us chained. And we don't wear chains." Outside the command windows, Earth turned slowly in the light of its sun. A small blue planet, fragile yet fierce, daring to spit in the face of empires. The spark had been struck. And the fire was coming. The Council did not forgive. When the news of the Vathar Prime's destruction reached the spire, the Chamber of Decrees erupted in outrage. Ambassadors shouted across the hall, their voices layered in 100 alien tongues. To them, humanity's defiance was not merely rebellion, it was contagion. If one species could ignore the rules, others might follow. That could not be allowed. By unanimous vote, the Council authorized a punitive strike. 11 fleets, drawn from 11 great powers, converged upon the Sol system. It was the largest mobilization in centuries, a storm of steel and decree meant to drown a single, defiant world. The Council expected fear. They expected submission. But what they found was Earth. The human response began with silence. No pleas for mercy. No offers of tribute. Instead, the Council's fleets entered a system transformed. Asteroids once idle now bristled with hidden cannons. Moons bore scars of rapid construction, their surfaces studded with launch silos and defense grids. Earth itself shimmered beneath a shield network that had never existed on Council records. In the span of months, the humans had fortified their cradle with ruthless efficiency. Admiral Elias Grant stood in the command chamber of the carrier Horizon's Wrath, orbiting Mars. His eyes traced the enemy fleet readings streaming across the displays. Dozens of capital ships. Hundreds of escorts. Firepower enough to scour the system clean. Behind him, officers shifted uneasily. One finally spoke. "Sir, by Council doctrine, their encirclement is unbreakable. They'll cut us off planet by planet until..." Grant's voice was iron. "Doctrine belongs to them, not to us. And if doctrine can't be broken, then we'll shatter it." The humans didn't line their ships in neat formations. They didn't march to the Council's rhythms. Instead, their fleets scattered like sparks across the system, unpredictable, invisible until they struck. The first true clash came at Jupiter. The Council armadas advanced in tight phalanxes, their warships arranged in mathematically perfect grids. To their doctrine, order meant strength. But to humans, order was a target. From Jupiter's shadow, the Black Armada surged. Cruisers darted like wolves between massive capital ships, tearing into engines with precision strikes. Frigates sacrificed themselves to ram enemy escorts, detonating nuclear warheads at point-blank range. "Unacceptable losses," cried one Council commander, his feeds filled with chaos. "They don't engage properly. They're ignoring all engagement protocols." Of course they were. Humans had never cared for protocols. The battle raged for hours, until Jupiter itself seemed aflame with weapons fire. By the time the last human ship disengaged, 2 Council fleets lay in ruin. But the Council did not stop. They tightened their grip on Saturn. The gas giant's moons became choke points, and among them, Titan, the lifeline of humanity's outer defenses. Its methane reserves fueled the Black Armada. Without it, Earth would suffocate. The Council encircled Titan with overwhelming force. Their strategy was textbook: siege, starve, force surrender. No species had ever broken such a noose. On the surface of Titan, under skies of orange haze, human engineers worked with frantic precision. Methane seas churned as drilling rigs bored deep, not to extract fuel, but to bury charges. Thousands of them. Miles of explosive veins. In orbit, Admiral Grant addressed his fleet. His voice was calm, though the eyes that watched him were filled with dread. "The Council believes rules will protect them. They think we will surrender because the law says we must. But there's a rule older than theirs. One they've forgotten." He paused, letting the silence stretch. Survival. The siege began on the 12th rotation. Council fleets advanced, their formations elegant, impenetrable, surrounding Titan like a steel vice. Their commanders issued formal demands of surrender, invoking centuries-old decrees. On Titan's surface, humans gave no answer. And then, the seas burned. Charges detonated in perfect sequence, turning Titan's methane oceans into an inferno. The moon's atmosphere ignited, blossoming into a firestorm that dwarfed the fleets above. Council ships, caught in the sudden holocaust, were swallowed whole. Shields buckled, hulls melted, reactors detonated in cascades of catastrophic light. From Earth's night sky, the blaze was visible, a star flaring briefly where none had been. The siege of Titan was over in minutes. 3 Council armadas lay shattered, their remains drifting like cinders in the void. Titan itself was scarred beyond recognition, a sacrifice humanity had made without hesitation. To the Council, it was unthinkable. No species destroyed its own world, its own resources, in defiance of decree. But humans had never fought to preserve what they had. They fought to ensure they could never be chained. Survivors limped back to the spire with tales that chilled the chamber of decrees. They turned a moon into a weapon. They would rather burn their own cradle than obey. They do not fight like us. They do not fight fair. Fear spread. Quietly, in backrooms and shadowed chambers, species long cowed by the council whispered new thoughts. If humans can resist, why can't we? The council responded with more rules, more decrees, more threats. But the galaxy had seen the fire on Titan. And words could not hide that blaze. On the horizon's wrath, Grant stood alone in the observation deck, watching the wreckage drift in Saturn's orbit. Reports confirm, an aide said softly. The armadas are broken. But Titan is lost. Grant's gaze remained fixed on the firelit horizon. His voice was low, almost to himself. Then Titan will be remembered, not for what it was, but for what it showed them. We don't surrender. Not to tyrants. Not to rules. He turned, his eyes hard with resolve. This war isn't about territory. It isn't about laws. It's about teaching the galaxy a truth it's forgotten. The aide swallowed. And what truth is that, sir? Grant's lips curved into a grim smile. That humans don't follow rules. We break them. And from their ashes, we make our own. Outside, the stars burned cold and eternal, but the galaxy was no longer the same. The struggle had begun, and it would not end until the old order lay in ruins. The fire of Titan had seen to that. The council spire had stood for 10,000 years. Orbiting the core star, it was not just a station but a symbol. Its towers stretched like blades of silver into the void, its halls echoing with the decrees that had bound the galaxy in chains. No outsider species had ever dared to set foot within its inner sanctum without permission. To challenge the spire was to challenge the galaxy itself. And now, humanity was coming. The Black Armada gathered like storm clouds on the edge of the core system. Hundreds of human warships, their hulls blackened and scarred from battles past, drifted in silence. Among them loomed the Horizon's Wrath, flagship of Admiral Elias Grant. Grant stood at the center of the war room, eyes fixed on the holographic projection of the spire. Around him, his officers waited, their breaths caught between fear and defiance. They all knew what this meant. One officer finally spoke. Sir, the spire is guarded by 3 grand fleets. Every defensive measure the Council possesses is concentrated there. If we attack, we may never return. Grant's gaze never wavered. His voice was low, steady, carved from steel. We didn't come this far to return. We came to end it. The approach was brutal. The Council's grand fleets filled the void with fire, their formations precise and unyielding. Massive dreadnoughts unleashed torrents of plasma, weaving a wall of annihilation across the stars. To any other species, it would have been impenetrable. But humans weren't any other species. The Black Armada surged forward, not in tidy formations, but in chaos. Ships scattered, darting between enemy lines, some sacrificing themselves to tear open holes for others. Nuclear detonations blossomed in the dark, ripping apart the symmetry of the Council's defenses. On the Horizon's Wrath, alarms screamed. A nearby cruiser exploded in a blaze of light, its wreckage grazing the flagship's shields. Officers barked damage reports, but Grant's voice cut through them all. Keep pressing. Every rule they've written says this wall can't be broken. So we'll break it. And break it they did. Human strike groups cut through supply ships, severing the enemy's lifelines. Swarms of fighters darted into blind spots, targeting engines instead of shields, crippling vessels rather than destroying them. For every human ship that burned, 2 Council ships fell into ruin. Hours passed, and the unbreakable wall crumbled. The Grand Fleets, once symbols of invincibility, shattered under the weight of unpredictability. And beyond the wreckage loomed the spire. Inside the council chamber, panic reigned. High Chancellor Xyrus, his robes of office fluttering as he strode to the central dais, tried to command order. This is impossible. No species could breach the Grand Fleets. The rules forbid it. An ambassador from the Kelith Collective hissed back, then perhaps the rules are broken. Arguments erupted, fear dripping from every word. For centuries, the Council had ruled by decree, by the illusion of inevitability. Now that illusion lay in ruins, and the predators they had mocked were at their gates. The spire trembled as the first human warships broke through the outer defenses. The storming of the spire was swift and merciless. Drop pods slammed into its towers, disgorging armored human marines who moved with purpose through the gilded corridors. Council guards, trained for ceremonial defense, crumbled under the ferocity of soldiers who had fought on Earth, on Titan, on countless battlefields where surrender meant extinction. The Chamber of Decrees, vast and domed, became a battlefield. Statues of past chancellors toppled as gunfire echoed through the sanctum. Smoke filled the air, mingling with the acrid scent of ozone and blood. At the heart of it all, Admiral Grant entered, flanked by his commanders. His boots echoed on marble in the silence that followed the last shots. The council delegates, dozens of species, watched in stunned horror. High Chancellor Xyrus rose, his voice shaking with fury and desperation. Human! You dare desecrate this hall? You dare bring war to the cradle of order itself? You are criminals, outlaws, vermin who defy the laws that hold the galaxy together. Grant's gaze was cold as the void. Laws? He stepped closer, his shadow falling across the Chancellor's throne. You mistake chains for laws. You've mistaken fear for order. Xyrus bared his fangs. You cannot destroy the Council. For every rule you break, another will bind you. This galaxy was built on decrees older than your species' first fire. And by those decrees, I demand you kneel. The chamber went silent. Every eye fixed on the human admiral. Grant didn't kneel. He stood tall, shoulders squared, his voice like thunder. We will never kneel. Not to tyrants. Not to decrees we never chose. You still don't understand, we are not here to follow your rules. We are here to end them. The declaration struck harder than any weapon. Around the chamber, murmurs rippled among the delegates. Some cowered in silence. Others, those long oppressed, long resentful, watched with something new in their eyes. Hope. Grant turned, his voice carrying to every corner. From this day forward, no species shall rule another. No decree shall bind the free. If you wish to live under laws, let them be the ones you choose for yourselves, not those forced upon you. The age of chains ends today. Behind him, human soldiers raised torches. Ancient scrolls of decrees, preserved for millennia, were hurled into the flames. The chamber filled with smoke and fire as centuries of tyranny turned to ash. Xyrus sank back, his authority crumbling with every burning page. The spire, once untouchable, had fallen not by siege engines or bombardment, but by the will of a species that refused to obey. The galaxy had been rewritten. After the battle, silence returned to the void. The Black Armada stood victorious, their battered hulls drifting around the shattered spire. The Council was no more. In its place lay uncertainty, yes, but also possibility. On the horizon's wrath, Grant addressed the galaxy through open channels. His words echoed across every world, every colony, every hidden corner where the oppressed had whispered of freedom. We are not conquerors. We are not rulers. We are proof that the old order can be broken. The rules you feared are gone. What comes next will not be decided by decrees, but by choice. Your choice. For a long moment, the galaxy listened in silence. And then, on distant worlds, voices rose. Cheers, chants, the first cries of rebellion turned liberation. Years later, the memory of the Spire's fall still lingered. Some species mourned the loss of stability. Others celebrated freedom for the first time in generations. As for humanity, we did not linger in thrones or crown ourselves emperors. We did what we always had, we moved forward. Exploring, building, daring. Not to dominate, but to live unchained. And in every corner of the galaxy, one truth endured. The Council had learned it only by struggle. That humans don't follow rules. We make them.